Hi everybody. I confess that the fact that you had to switch off your mobile phones surprised me a little bit, and I hope you didn't really do it, because I'm going to ask you to bring it back in working mode later on to have you test a couple of features. Now, what about this presentation? There are a couple of letters here, UX, which are letters that capture the attention of everybody. UX, UI, design, this kind of things. No, I'm not going to talk about big systems. I'm not going to use big words, design, architecture, abstraction, information. No, this presentation is all about stupid JavaScript, Bootstrap, HTML things. For what? For giving sense to these two letters, U and X. UX, technically it means user experience, and it's often confused with UI. There are plenty of pointless discussions about what is UI, user interface, what is UX. They are different, they are not different, they are the same, they are synonyms. Designers, UI designer, UX designers. To cut the long story short, it's all about what you present to your users. And that's essentially user interface. So it's the front end that you offer to your users for them to interact with the system, with the software you create. And when they interact with the system, they, like every other thing in this world, they go through an experience. They do something, they experience something, they get feelings, they get feedback, they give feedback, and that is the experience they go through when they work with your software. So what we want to do, and what this talk is all about, is a few golden rules for ensuring that the experience that users go through when they face a number of common tasks, like a date, inserting a date into a form. This is one of them, or picking an item from a list. So this is the level of aspects that I will focus on. What we can do to ensure that they have the best or a better experience at all. So there are 7 golden rules that I selected out of a longer list that I usually cover in my book and longer classes. Problem number 1 is typing versus speaking. Truly mobile detection. Longer, particularly long forms, so when you have a form with tens of input forms, the role of drop-down content, modals, dates, and images. First one, problem number 1, should you type or should you pick? The problem is, users have to make a choice. So since the early days of development, since the early days of graphical user interfaces, the problem has been solved by offering drop-down combo boxes, drop-down lists, list boxes, multiple single selection, those kind of things. Nobody likes to use classic list boxes anymore. The list box is a Windows 3.1 kind of thing, 25 years ago, when I started my career. I think I've never seen a list box used in web applications. A drop-down list is a much more common option. Except that it's not exactly nice. It's effective, no doubt. It's easy to code. It's not, honestly, nice. For example, if you have a Bootstrap-based template, there is nothing that natively comes out of Bootstrap. There are plenty of plugins and extensions, but in Bootstrap, there is nothing built in that can turn automatically, that can adjust and makes nicer and in line with other graphical solutions, a drop-down list. But let me make a concrete example, classical example. The list of countries, you have a form with an address, country. Now, in the world, there are more or less 250 something different countries. So whenever you display a drop-down list with all the countries in the world, your markup is bigger, significantly bigger. One of the things I do for my everyday job is screen scraping HTML. And yeah, there are a few pages that I monitor, that my team monitors regularly, and one of the pages in this website that we screen scrape to capture information that we process and aggregate into other pieces of data, there is a long list of countries. So we have to cut off every time bytes and bytes and bytes of stuff that means nothing. It's useless. So the point of selecting a country is a fundamental point, but if you solve the traditional way, so letting users picking an item from a long list, you have to build the long list in the markup. So the markup is significantly bigger. So let me give you a different solution. Bring up Visual Studio. Let me use something to help my mouse to figure out things. Okay, done. The name of the country. Because for users, typing per se is a much faster kind of activity. There are users, for sure, that are so slow in their way of working with the interface that they have the mouse, they slowly point the mouse, click, select this, they think that I have to right click, select, start up, and okay, go. They work like this. Other users, because of their attitude, because they are faster or whatever, they just prefer to use the keyboard, tab into the field, and just enter data. So here we go. Let's get into this sample code. Just a fake kind of thing here. Okay. Completion and drop downs. So here is the demo. So pick a country from a long list. It's 250 different countries. I can scroll, of course. Now, browsers are smart at this, because if I just type the letter, and the first few letters, I can perhaps, I can get here. If I do IV, so I mean, browsers are smart at making you as easy and smooth as possible to select from the list. So for some users, but not all users are aware of the fact that they can put the focus on the field and type to get there. So it might not be obvious for users. And yet you have the problem that all browsers give this horrible kind of color scheme. This has been made nicer and larger and padded, but the padding just adds white or transparent border. So it's not really nice to see, and yet it forces your page to contain a lot of unneeded and unfunctional markup, just for nothing. This is a different experience, typing. But when you type the name of a country, the case is a problem. The name of the country is a problem, because the name can be localized or can be English. The case can be different. United Kingdom or Great Britain, United States or USA. So there are, sometimes it may not be obvious. And even when we know that USA or United States is that country, there is no reason, honestly, to make it harder for users. If accept both United States or USA. So if we type here, we could make it much easier for users, because they see a text box and there is no difference for them, so they don't have to do different stuff. If they used to type and move ahead with the keyboard, they just go here and they can type and select without using the mouse. So they don't have to change the way in which they work. If they want, they can, but they are not forced to. But pick a country by name. How do we solve the problem of case? Well, we just type, and I can, regardless of I type, using type ahead auto-completion, I can show the list of countries. And look at the cost of calls to a backend. So there is the trade-off markup downloaded once and the not so nice experience and UI versus a much nicer and made-to-measure UI at the cost of extra HTTP calls because of auto-completion. So this is the trade-off. But in this case, if I accept and find a reasonable trade-off, I can show them the list of countries taken from a backend, and I can let them go quickly. Now, typing versus picking. Picking is pick from a fixed list. Typing is free. So I selected Argentina, but what if I move ahead and then as a user, I go back here, oh, it's Argentina, and then I try to change something here. It disappears. It has to disappear, because the point is forcing this to be something more than just a free text input field with auto-completion. It's free text with auto-completion with a further layer of JavaScript code that clears out the field as soon as there is any typing. So in the end, using the type ahead plugin of Bootstrap, so plain common use code, there's nothing special, with an extra that you write, JavaScript code that captures the input element, event on this field and clears out everything. So if you get input, clears out. That's it. With this combination of factors, you turn this input field which is styled perfectly in the Bootstrap environment, to turn that to be a nice list. What do you think? It's 50-50, right? So extra calls, no extra calls, longer markup, yeah, nicer UI, but actually there is, yeah, it's 50-50. To make the difference is this other aspect. Now, in this context, you are in full control over the back end. Yeah, you have extra HTTP calls, yes, but you control the back end. So the front end here calls your web endpoint that decides and returns the list of items to display here. So every time I type something here, for the black letters here, there will be a call made to the back end which filters out this letter against a list of countries and returns items to display here. You are in total control of the algorithm on the server. So you can have a smart logic there to unify United States and USA. If it's Great Britain, if it contains something that matches Great Britain or UK, it's okay. Return the same option here. And you can do nice things like pick a country by continent. If I type Asia, you see that I have Afghanistan, American Samoa, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahamas, Bahrain, okay, Asia. Bahamas disappeared because Bahamas is not in Asia. If I type Europe, I have with the A only the country A, B, whatever. There's no Argentina here because it's South America. And even more if I type Oceania, I see only a few countries. So you are in total control of what is typed here and how it is interpreted. And that gives the extra power of making your users happy. So it doesn't matter how you type, just type something I can understand. And taking this even farther, you can reach with, and it's the same algorithm. Okay, you can have something, let me show you. This is a website, one of the websites of my company. You can have, this is tennis oriented, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar or fan of tennis, but you can have strings like Federer before quarterfinals, hard court, outdoor in 2015. It's Google style. Okay? It's all about how sophisticated is the logic on the back end that parses this string. So it doesn't simply have to be take the string and matches against a substring. It's an algorithm. And you can make it as smart as you like at nearly no extra costs. It's an if algorithm. It's a search algorithm. But this search algorithm goes on top of the idea that in the user interface you prefer typing versus speaking. Type versus speak, or speak versus type, because there's things is never easy in this world. There is also the other way of looking at things. And honestly, I have to confess that for many, well, years is too much, for many months, I was sure that typing was much better than speaking, except that I started working for my daughter. My daughter is is 15 years old, and last summer she started getting some money on her own, just fixing nails for friends. And I offered to build a website, and she said, no. Come on, honey, it's your dad. Let me build a website for keeping track of your appointments. Okay, but I only want to use that from my iPhone. It has to work well with my iPhone. Okay, responsive web design, Bootstrap, what's the problem? I'll do that. And I built a website using Bootstrap, paying attention to the XS size of Bootstrap, and I was proud of my work. And when I deployed and invited her to connect and start using, she complained about the way, 10 minutes? Wow. She complained about the way in which dates could be worked. The problem was that on mobile devices, you cannot work with type. Typing is horrible on mobile devices. Okay? You have to pick. Because the experience on mobile devices is different. The users working with mobile devices, they feel differently. It's a difference. So on mobile devices, picking is completely different. You have to opt for picking, not for typing. You have to avoid typing to give a much better experience. Also because on regular desktop websites, the same page on a desktop website, on a desktop browser, you can sometimes type because you have more comfort. You have a real keyboard. On mobile, it's not. Mobile users are so familiar with their way of picking things that they don't want to consider. If you bring up a date picker, for example, it's a shock on a mobile device. You have to go the natural way. And in red, on mobile devices, picking from a list is a more natural action than typing. Sure, but on mobile devices, and problem number 3, how do you distinguish truly mobile devices from resized browser windows? This is the problem of Bootstrap and the core problem of responsive web design, which has so many merits as long as you are aware and recognize that it's not mobile. So you have no clue. The reasons about how large is the screen, but not about the real agent behind that. So let me switch briefly to another application that shows a quick trick and introduces another library to do mobile detection. This is exactly the website I mentioned a moment ago that my daughter uses for personal purpose to book her own things. And I have here, this is an MVC application, and here there is client core picker. Here we go. So this is a razor view. So it's a piece of JavaScript code that I inject in a regular web page. And the purpose of this web page is showing the input field where the date of the appointment has to be entered. So at the end of the day, the only thing I want to change is whether the type has to be date, so that mobile browsers can understand that and display and bring up the regular, standard, common date picking functionality on the operating system, or it has to be text and attached to a date picker to work nicely and effectively on non-mobile devices. So I need to have something here that tells me whether or not the agent is mobile. Now, how can I do that in JavaScript? There is a free library called Wurfel that offers a property called form_factor, and form factor is usually a string. You can check out the Wurfel.io website for details about the strings, the form factor strings, but they are things like smartphone, tablet, and a few others. So if it's a smartphone, and in my case, my purpose was the iPhone, so smartphone was more than enough. So if form factor is a smartphone, I do some other things. I have found the discriminant that tells me what to do, making sure that it's truly a native device. Now, what about Wurfel? And this is the point number 3 that's in my list. Let me show you the layout of this. Here you go. That's all you need to have in your pages to enable Wurfel. Wurfel.io/Wurfel.js, but it's not. There is no JavaScript logic that is injected in your pages. The effect of this line is that your DOM receives a JavaScript object called Wurfel with 3 properties: form_factor, is_mobile, and another one, I don't remember the name, but it gives you the name of the browser. Okay? Is_mobile is true or false, and essentially it's false if it's a desktop, and it's true in all other cases. So is_mobile is true even if it's a tablet, even if it's an Xbox, it's a smart TV. It's false only if it's a desktop. But in this way, you have reliable information, and Wurfel, which we use the JavaScript way, in the end, the mechanics behind this line is that there's a request made from this context to this endpoint, so this endpoint receives. So Wurfel.io, the endpoint receives the user agent of your device. It parses server-side using the Wurfel engine, which is the engine that Google and Facebook use for their device detection logic. So Wurfel is a separate product which has some free options as well as some premium paid options. But it's the engine that Wurfel and that Google and Facebook use. So it's absolutely reliable, and it uses its own logic to tell you information about the device. So problem number 3 is essentially solved. So use Wurfel.js and combine that information with whatever logic you need to apply differently. Long forms. Now, is this a problem? So you have a process that requires users to enter large, numerous pieces of data. It's not technically a problem because, okay, you just put input fields one after the next or one close to the next. So you populate, you fill out any space you have and you're done. Except that, it's not particularly nice, Scrolling is to some extent you can do it. But let me show you a different way of achieving the same, which doesn't really require that you reinvent the UI. It's just a smart approach. Using tabs. The simplest is using tabs. Here we go. Let me go. Here we go. An example here. This is called stepped. I run this again. Here we go. I have a regular bootstrap tabs. I have 4 here, but you can have as many as you like. Essentially, the idea is that you take the long list of input fields and you categorize them. You just split them into logical areas that can represent a step-by-step way for users to fill out the form. It's a wizard style. Now it's up to you to decide whether users can freely jump from tab to tab and fill some here, some here, some here, or some here, or they have to go step by step, forced, and with, for example, validation that prevents them from going from step 1 to step 2 if all that has not been entered yet. So in the simplest case is you have a form that starts here and ends here, the form tag. Within the form tag, you put the classic bootstrap tab strip markup, and then you put in each tab the input fields. You don't have to change anything except that you add within the form the bootstrap markup for tabs. The save button is part of the form, you're done. If this is, and this is the simplest you can do, but you can do even more sophisticated things using, for example, a plugin. A bootstrap plugin that essentially gives you control over going from here to here. You can have a validation whenever you switch between the tab. The plugin allows you to give a different UI to the tabs. So it's essentially the same HTML structure with some extra additional JavaScript code that allows you to have a back and next buttons subject to validation. You can enable or disable free navigation, and you can also have something, in this case it's a plain progress bar, but it can be a number that tells you the amount of work that has been done in the UI. The number you display here in this stupid example is just a function of the number of tabs, but it can be a number that you calculate giving a weight, giving an importance to the value entered. So you make 100 the total number of information you have to receive. I only have 70, so 70% of your profile is completed, which is another nice feature. It doesn't really add a lot, okay, to users, knowing that only 40% of your profile is, so functionally speaking, it doesn't change much. But yeah, the experience of users working with your front end is much, much better because it gives the message, oh, look, wow, the system knows that I only entered 40% of the information I can. The system is taking care of me. It's a psychological effect. And for essentially nothing extra you have to do. More. Per application basis with a general rule. The comment that this guy left here, it says, for me as a user, but it's his own personal experience. So for me as a user, I want to have consistent behavior for browsers. So if I use a browser, I expect the browser to behave in a certain way. So he is apparently against the suggestion to give a uniform experience across browsers. I tend to disagree, but again, it's a problem that as developers we must be aware of, but for which there is no obvious point. So when they ask you, when the customer asks you, can we add an extra field to the form to enter a date? This is not going to be free kind of work. So it could be really, really problematic point. So I warn my users and I ask for more money when it comes. Finally, images. Now, images, how many images should we have? I mean, how many copies of the same image should we have? The picture of the user. Load your pic. Users now, usually on computers or mobile phones, they go to the gallery, pick up the best, latest picture they have, and they upload, except that it's probably 4 or 5 megs of picture. Who takes care of resizing that to an acceptable size? You can, get the picture, so you pay the cost of uploading, resize to the thumbnail size automatically, doable, and then you keep on using the thumbnail size image. But sometimes, if you have to print a badge, you might want to use a high quality image. So you need to have 2, 3, 4, 5 different images. Another problem, if the user is free of uploading whatever image, and the application requires that it's a face that you display, cropping is not a trivial problem. Face recognition is not a trivial problem. Yes, there are, even from jQuery, plugins that do crop and face recognition. Consider them. But yet, the problem can be reduced to, are you able to upload the image, one image, and use only that one? Face recognition, cropping, resizing, whatever. Are you able to programmatically manipulate the image the way you like it and keep using one? Yes, no. If yes, fine. If no, you have to maintain multiple copies of the same image. That starts getting to be a problem. It's work on the server side. You need to have people, staff, looking at the images, adjusting images. When the user has uploaded a big picture with a big landscape and there's a small user in the corner, but yet that is the picture that identifies the user. Someone has to manually cut the image, put the face of the user at the center, and then adjust. It's work. So there is a tool called Image Engine that does exactly this. It's not magic. It's not the perfect tool. But it's a tool that for free, at the cost of free registration, allows you to do this. Expo where width. Allows you to do with this. Okay, this is the same image, and the image, except that it's a little bit blurred. But there is a player in the corner of the screen, and everything else is the tennis court. So it's not really usable picture. This is the original image. This is the thumbnail. Again, the picture is particularly blurred, deliberately blurred. Here you can guess the player here. There's something red here, a human. This is the same image to the size of a thumbnail, and you see just nothing. This is better because the player is at least close to the center of the image. Now, these 3 different images have been produced by the tool, not by you. The website has just one image, this, and the thumbnail and the cropped image have been generated and cached on a sort of content delivery network by the image engine library. And if I show you the source code of this, you will see that it's all about having the full path to the image, HTTP full path, passed as an argument to try.light.imageengine.in. Usually try will be replaced with your user, your account. Light or premium. Light is free, premium gives you more bandwidth. So this is going to change here. So you take this, you pass arguments like width 500 or crop 200 by 200 or width and then many other parameters. And this image, the full path, because it has to be downloaded on the content delivery network, is put there, is resized, is cached, and because every request you made to this website now, it will check the user agent and will fully resize and maintain multiple copies on a per device basis. It's free. Free under certain conditions which are good enough, at least, to get you started. Thank you very much for your time.